So, David Zritsky for the Bond Experience, welcome back. I've invited two individuals to this show because you could tell by the thumbnail, we are talking about From Tailors with Love. But now, From Tailors with Love is a book authored by these two gentlemen, Matt Spaiser and Peter Brooker. Welcome to the show, guys.
Hello. Hello, David.
Hey, David.
Hey, Matt. Great to be here.
By the way, I've seen now a fourth entity. Matt, could you hold that up again? Oh my gosh. Ladies and gentlemen, we've got a book. We actually have a book here. I'm so excited. This is From Tailors with Love, an evolution of menswear through the Bond films by Peter Brooker and Matt Spaiser. Guys, I am so excited for you.
Hey, thanks, David.
Congratulations, Matt.
Yeah, nice to meet you, Pete.
Thanks.
And that's all for us today.
See you later.
Well, hold on a second. We've got to flesh this out because these two authors, a lot of you recognize them. They're great friends. They're also forces to be reckoned with, quite frankly, in the Bond community. Let me kind of bring everybody up to date since we last saw them. First of all, Peter Brooker. He's a novelist. He's a micro-influencer, which that is not a lower GI thing. That's an online thing. Curator of men's fashion in the UK, experience in copywriting, over 300 published articles in menswear magazines, host of the largest online menswear podcast in the UK, freelance consultant, don't hold that against them. And then, of course, we've got Matt Spaiser, creator of the world-renowned blog, The Suits of James Bond, author of 800 posts, not that he's trying to show up Peter at all. Fashion consultant specializing in tailored clothing designer and stylist, and a graphic designer and web designer. And they've put this book together, and we've got to find out just one simple question. And that is why, guys? Matt, Let's start with the why. Why did you put this book together?
Well, years after just founding Bond Suits, I have been actually, David, one thing, you did mention me as the Suits of James Bond, and I did change the blog name last year. You did. So just want to make sure that's clear, that we all know that I've rebranded as Bond Suits. And so that is something, after doing this, I think a book was just the next thing I had to do. But I couldn't do it alone. I needed a different angle for the book.
What an amazing segue. Yeah, Pete, that's your cue, Peter, to give us your why. I mean, what was the burning passion in you to write this?
So I've always wanted to write a book. I've actually self-published a book before, which was terrible, and I've written 2 films, scripts that are kind of sitting on my hard drive down there. So it was always my dream to have something palpable, something to show up to the camera like Matt did. My copy hasn't arrived yet, so I just get to show a coffee mug. But so I had the idea of doing a book around one of my favorite subjects, one of my most passionate themes, and that's when I reached out to Matt and said, had he ever thought or considered about writing a book on the subject, knowing obviously his great blog. And there was really no other choice for me. If Matt said no, then I wouldn't have taken it any step further. But from my memory, Matt, you were very open to the conversations early on. There was little resistance from you, so that was very good.
Yeah, because it's something that I have wanted to do for a long time. It's something that people have been asking me to do for almost a decade. I started the blog, over a decade ago, and people already it didn't take long for people to start asking me to write a book on the subject. But it's it's a big task. It's something that I could definitely not have done by myself. And a lot of people do take their blogs and just publish them into a book, but I didn't think that was going to work. And I don't really see I don't see much of a marketing appeal in that. So it had to be something different. And I think you brought something different to the table that I could not bring to the book myself.
Yeah. And I think, one of the things I want this audience to realize is that you said it, Matt, very well. This is not something that just you cut and paste, and then the next morning you sent it into a self-publishing unit, and boom, it's on Amazon. I was able to, from very far away, very sporadically, witness the journey that you've been on. And correct me if I'm wrong, it started nearly 4 years ago, but Was it always going to be in the same form and function that exists today, or did it take on many different versions?
Yeah, so I was going through old emails as well before jumping on the call and trying to figure out when the genesis was, and it felt like summer. It was summer of 2017, and I was pitching the idea to Matt, and we came up with I think the initial proposal was like to do a style guide, like 100 lessons, and we would curate it. We would go through chronological order of the Bond films. And correct me if I'm wrong here, Matt, but we had that idea of doing like 100 lessons in style and 100 examples of that from the Bond films. And that's what we put together in the first proposal, if memory serves. And that was the angle we went in at.
Yeah, that was one of the early proposals, but
right.
We had a few different early ones, and I can't remember what they all were. But I think overall, ultimately it just turned out that I think we just figured it was just best to go in chronological order and just tell a history, because I think that's how people are going to be expecting to read this book.
Yeah, sorry, Dave.
I was going to say, as somebody that did get a little wee peek at the book, it works like that, because I think that's how Bond fans, and certainly people that follow the sartorial lifestyle of Bond, think. They think in terms of chronology. They think in terms of eras and periods and moments of time. So the way you divided these and the way you stacked them up, I think, is not only logical for the way we're intuitively reading, but I think it actually tells a really good story that way. Would you say?
Yeah, I think it does.
Yeah, and another early proposal idea we had. So it did take, you're right, it kind of morphed and went in different directions before we kind of settled on the idea. We spoke a long time about how to show the taxonomy of this. Are we going to do it chronologically, scene by scene? Dr. No, and I think we felt that would just be transposing your blog, Matt, into a book. So there was little point of that. But we did have, we had a proposal that had like just ivory dinner jackets, for example. Now let's talk about all the best ivory dinner jackets of Bond and get those into one place. Now let's move on to black tie, because we felt like people needed to put things in a box, and we needed to kind of group it that way. And we even had a really good artist by the name of Patricio. Patricio.
I'm not going to try. It starts with a C. But he's a fantastic artist, and he's actually featured in Mark Edwards' book.
Yeah.
Ah.
So
and he's great. And
he is superb.
He put a great couple of illustrations together. And we titled the book "Drawn to the Style of Bond," because we were going to have all of his wonderful illustrations. Anyways, certain things didn't quite work out, and that was one of them, until we settled on the main form of the book. Yeah, go for it.
Why does a project like this? And I'm asking questions. Some of the answers I know, but I think it'd be very interesting for people when they hold this book or when they consider purchasing this book. It's not just a glossary of things to look up and go, oh, there it is, because that's the internet. No, this is very purposely put in a certain way. What was the thinking behind getting into the mindset of somebody like a David Zaritsky, who likes to wear and experience these things, to also hear the history, the people behind it?
Yeah, well, I think the people are always what makes the story special. In any kind of story, it's always about the people. And my blog is about the clothes more than anything else. In this book, I think we had to go for the people's story this time.
Yeah, and I remember a couple of the interviews that we snared early on with the likes of Janie Tamim, and quickly we realized, once we had a few interviews under our belt, that it was really the tailors and the brands and the people that made the clothes that were on set, that are still around, hearing those firsthand stories. David, you've done great things on getting some of these stories to life as well, bringing them onto your show. And we felt like that was really the thrill for us, was to hear these stories firsthand. And I think hopefully that's going to be what people gravitate towards when they read the book.
People's
Yeah.
mouths will drop. I will tell you now, I have a slight bias, obviously, with you being friends, but not much. I can be very critical, and these two gentlemen know that. It was very hard for me to put down the book. In fact, quite frankly, I put it down once. And it was because Danielle was getting rather frustrated about dinner having been made and getting cold. And then I continued it right after. It is such a smooth and fluid read that I think people are going to find it exciting.
Yeah, well, that actually I attribute that to Pete. That is Pete's talent, is making things flow. That's not my area. I think Pete is why the book is just why it flows well, why I don't want to put it down when I pick it up again. And it's there's I feel like we each brought our own things to this book. I mean, I brought my many years of researching the Bond styles, but I think Pete added a lot of color to the book.
Oh, Pete
Thanks,
does
man.
that.
That's what he did.
Apart from my face, I've got color going on everywhere else.
There's two things he does. He adds color and flow. I mean, I've said that for years. Nothing but. By the way, I want to take a palate cleansing pause for a moment to show our audience something. And when we do this, you gentlemen afterwards, it's very short, can explain exactly what they are seeing here. But hold on a second. Here we go.
I think I have the same shirt on.
Yeah,
That
Matt,
maybe
you had
different
both
shirt. I'm not
eyebrows
sure.
raised. You had both eyebrows raised at that moment.
Well, they were talking through their exclaiming in excitement. But gentlemen, what did we just see there? What was that?
So that was the moment when we had a publishing deal, and we literally just got off the phone to one of the publishers. And at that point, that was very late on with the book. I mean, the book had almost, Matt, I think that was about 60 or 70% written at the time. So it was all the way down the road, and we were perhaps on the edge of just doing it ourselves and self-publishing and going down that route. But then we finally snared a publisher, and so that was like that rare moment that we captured it between ourselves. And when the other guy hung up, we literally just did that to each other because it was so unexpected and it was such a long time coming. So yeah, nice moment for us.
Yeah.
It has to be. Now, what's this? I mean, all these thoughts come to mind when I think about a 4-year journey. Was it 4 years working straight through? I mean, I'm always fascinated by Ian Fleming's process of writing. I mean, was yours, I'll work 5 minutes in May and then 2 minutes in February? Like what was the process?
I think it was kind of like that for a while. We kind of picked up speed as we went along. Well, I remember we had actually started. We had written the history pretty much through the Connery era, having Connery and Lazenby, and we kind of had finished After Diamonds Are Forever, and we felt like we had a great story there, but then we that might have been around the time when we actually got that publisher, and we had to just keep going after that and really push through the other eras. But because we already had so much content for it, but that was, I think, at the point where we really sped up and started writing a lot more. Would you say that was true, Pete?
Yeah, I mean, so over the course of 4 years, it wasn't like every day we were talking about it, every day we were in touch. I mean, I think I must have moved house about 5 times in that space and changed job and title and rebranded, etc. And traveled. So I mean, there was a lot of times where I would just say to Matt, how about we pick up from where we left off and give this another go? But you're right, Matt. I think the last year we just put the foot down and just charged. We just ran to the finish line. And I think the last half of the book was really done so much quicker, like it's 5 times as quick as what it took for the previous 3 years, right?
Yeah, but there was one big thing that helped us, and that was one of the small, I guess, good things that came out of COVID was that there were people sitting at home at the beginning of COVID. They didn't know what to do, and that opened them up to be able to speak with us. Some of these people, they weren't going to their offices or their tailoring shops or their film sets, and they were available to speak with us.
I remember that. Yes, I remember. Sorry,
We
David.
had quite a few people that were able to do that with us.
The first person that was immediately available from my memory was Lindy Hemming. Lindy Hemming almost just had nothing to do for one small afternoon, and that was enough. And we went in like vultures and got it. She was just a delight to speak to. But just that, I mean, I think she's just a workaholic. Obviously, her filmography speaks for itself. But getting Lindy on board, and then I think gradually other people also had time available, and then it all of a sudden stopped again because I think people were getting a bit talked out, interviewed out. I remember speaking to or getting in touch with Mark Cousins for a quote and something that we needed, and he said, "I've already done 6 podcasts today." So so there were certain people, and because obviously we're all in lockdown, podcasts and vlogs became, everyone had one all of a sudden. So I think people were just getting a little bit done with it all.
Yeah. Well, I've got a special surprise for the people watching this, and hopefully you're watching this today when the book comes out. So these wonderful authors have given us permission to actually take a look. We'll call it a sneak peek at some of the insides of this book. Now, gentlemen, here's how we're going to play this game. What I'd love to do is, here we go. We're going to take a look at this.
Is this Matt's topless photos?
It is.
There
we go. All right. So there are some conscious decisions you made in this, but give us an idea of what we're looking at right now.
Well, you're seeing the spread of the first page of chapter 3. So this chapter really goes into discussing a lot about Anthony Sinclair, the tailor who made Sean Connery's suits for the Bond films. So you can see a great photo that Pete snapped of the former location of where Sinclair was on Conduit Street.
Yeah. And there were quite a few locations that we went to, and there was one that I missed off. So I had to take a day off work, and schlep all the way to South London to get a picture of a derelict building. But
oh my gosh, did you really?
It was fine. But I do remember thinking, I've just got to get one photo. I could probably just go on Google Earth and do it, but I wanted to get it for myself.
So, I'm hoping that there are going to be people who are taking this book, walking around London. I mean, most of these tailors were located in Mayfair, but there are some other locations in London too. But I feel like you can take this book, walk around London, and try to find these historic buildings where the Bond clothes were made. And yeah. I mean, that's something that I did when I first went to London in 2012. I walked around London, tried to find all these great locations. And it just really feels special just to be able to stand in front of these buildings. And obviously you can't do that with the book, but you can open the book and you can see these places. And I think we wanted to use these photos to give context to where these moments happened.
I mean, this book has things that a Bond movie has. It has good locations. It's got incredible characters. You've got quotes from people. It moves along at a breakneck speed. I love this. And this page we're going to have to talk about because, here on this page, for example, you're talking about the very famous conduit cut. But this also shows people a very conscious decision you both made in using, I don't know if you call it iconography or schematic drawings, but it really breaks it apart.
And this is where Matt really came into his own for the book. I mean, not only did I get to use his great encyclopedic brain about all the information of Bond suits, but we got to utilize his great graphic design skills. And I think it just looks beautiful. There are so many of these as well. And it kind of helps, I guess it helps people like me that wouldn't necessarily know all of the terminology of some of the suits. I mean, that was a discussion that Matt and I had whilst writing it, where we would be like, well, do we need to explain what a full chest is? Do we need to explain some of the kind of the tailoring terms? And I would say to Matt, look, can you explain this? Because not even I know it. So we had to kind of appreciate where people and what angle to come in at, their knowledge base of reading it, so that we didn't lose people along the way.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, this spread even has a footnote in it to explain a tailoring term that but we didn't use too many of those. But there were times when we just kind of just needed to just take a break from the text and explain what something is, because we know that a lot of people who are reading this will know a lot about how things are tailored and about that, but some people won't. And we tried to make this book accessible for many people. We didn't want to insult anyone's intelligence, but we want to make sure that people understand what we're talking about.
Yeah, no, it's a great move. Here you've got something. What is it? The silhouette of Brione's dinner jacket for Casino Royale. My gosh. And look at the amount, I love the fact that you weren't afraid to go into some of the detail, but you've also simplified it for us all.
Yeah, I tried to make it accessible, tried to make it so people can look at these and understand what makes these clothes special. Because it's really difficult just to use words to describe everything. But so we wanted to include these illustrations just so it helps point out some of these, many of these terms we do use throughout the book. But then you can look at the illustrations and then kind of see what it's pointing to.
I love the fact, and Pete, you had to have a hand in this, when you talked about people, like, someone like this, Frank Foster, which I know both of you have a lot of adoration for. It was also important to get the people around the individuals, the characters that made. How difficult was that to collect all that information?
Yeah, I just want to touch on the Frank Foster thing first, because there was a stage early on where Matt said, "Oh, I've got a taped interview of Frank Foster." I mean, I didn't know this until like a good couple of months into what we were doing, the project. And I said, "Oh, that might be useful." And so he sent me the tapes over, and they're about 3 hours long, and I transcribed the whole thing.
Oh my gosh.
I was hooked on every word. I mean, Frank Foster had such charisma, and not in just his personal, the shirts that he made, but in just the delivery and the way he was with people, and especially that conversation he had with Matt. There was such a free respect for each other in that tape. Anyway, it was great. It was so at that point I think I even said to Matt, "Shall we just call this book the Frank Foster book, or just make a book about Frank Foster?" And that was actually considered. But getting sorry, yeah, go on. Yeah, so that was it.
Really, I know. I mean, but the Frank Foster interview is the first interview that we did that is featured in this book, and actually that interview was something that I had been holding on to, because when I first did the interview, it was Pete said 3 hours. I was like, I didn't even want to go listen to it again. I was scared to hear myself. I was scared to transcribe all that, and then I figured, this would be something good to save if I ever do a book.
Yeah.
Oh, really?
I had that in the back of my mind, for actually a few years before I even met Pete.
Wow.
I had thought about this interview for that, because it's just such a special interview. We don't put the whole thing in because there's some other, all kinds of stuff that we talked about, but it wasn't all appropriate for the book. But we definitely included the highlights, some very entertaining things, very informative things. And then in preparation for the book itself, later on, we actually spoke with Frank's widow, Mary, who makes pretty much all of the shirts. She is actually the person who's very much responsible for the production of the shirts, and she has a big hand in the Bond shirts. So, and I think she is just as important as he was. In the Bond films. And we also spoke with his daughter Sam, who runs the shop.
Yeah.
And so these people are all very, very important in the story of the Bond clothing. And
you get that sense. I mean, you absolutely, as we go through this, for example, now we're obviously looking at Hayward at 95 Mount Street, London, for those of you in the cheap seats. This is so you go buy the book, not read the screen, ladies and gentlemen. Link is below, for goodness sakes. But, I as a reader, and not and you as an author, I think there needs to be a relationship. And what I found was you were weaving the color and the tapestry, if I dare say, of these characters so successfully in the cadence of chronology, like you talked about earlier, that I felt like I was along for the ride of your research. I mean, that's how effective this book is. It's not this tomb of, and there's those out there where it's like, here's a chunk of research. Here's a chunk of research, because you refer to characters in the past. You refer to, the leading men. You refer to surrounding characters, and even what was happening at the time that these tailors were happening, which was fascinating in and of itself.
Yeah, and I think that was the angle. Once we settled on that angle of how to write and sculpt and the story that we needed to tell of this book, it became a lot easier in that way. I mean, earlier on, we were having discussions about whether to include women's clothing, the Bond girls, things like that. And, do we talk about the watches? So, we had to really draw a line, because otherwise it just, you can just go off,
Yeah, there was a lot. I mean, there's a lot you can discuss, but we think that, the audience for this book, they're interested in men's clothing. Now, I mean, we touch on some women's clothing, very just in, here and there, just to add context to what was going on. But
and then we quickly get off it and get back onto men.
Yeah, because that's something I've even touched on my blog, just trying to see what the interest in women's clothing might be. And some people love it. Some people, I mean, everyone's going to love what Ursula Andress wore, but that's the. I think that we want to tell the story of the men's clothes, the story as it most closely relates to Bond himself.
Yeah, and
I think that's why we have the Bond experience. So because we want to experience Bond, and
didn't see that coming.
I don't know, and I think that's why. And
now cut
this book helps experience Bond, and that was kind of one thing that we had in mind.
Well, I like what you did with that, because it's a great segue. Some of you saw a sneak peek of that picture that we just had up. Let's bring it up. You had a very conscious decision to show some of the items and to kind of put some actual images as opposed to just some of the breakdown and line drawings. What was the discussion that the two of you had of consciously doing that, and why did you do that?
Well, I think we just wanted to get as much. We wanted to get as much real photography of their actual clothes as we could, and since you have many clothes that are that are screen accurate, or even you even have some screen worn pieces, but we wanted to make sure that we used things that could just illustrate the clothes in any way that we could. Now, Matt and Pete, let's set the record straight, because this is a rumor that's been going around for a little bit. So if it's uncomfortable, let me know and we'll edit this out. Is it true that you didn't want to use my face because I asked for too much money contractually if you did use my face?
I think it was more, we did insist that you put the clothes on. So like the topless shots were all very well and good, but
which was weird for me.
We just thought it doesn't add anything to the conversation. Sorry.
Well, this photo is topless. It's missing the top of David.
But it was cut off at the perfect spot because I have a very identifiable Jay Leno chin. So my mother definitely would recognize me in an autopsy with that photo.
Yeah, well.
People can draw their own version of you on there. I mean, right?
You know something? I'm sorry. We are going to do that. We're going to have a coloring book version of this book.
Please send us photos if you do fill in the rest of David's head.
There'll be a contest. We'll see.
But we want to make sure that the clothes are the focus of the picture. We didn't want David to distract from this beautiful Massimo Alba suit.
No, and it's great. And I love, by the way, there are those that are going to be tempted. I'm going to have a little fun right now because this is me. When I was reading, I was so tempted to I wonder how they did it, the Craig era. I wonder how they did this era. But I kind of made myself read it straight through from beginning to end as opposed to jump. Now, I guess people could jump around, but what I loved about this is it really weaves together. Like there are things that are referenced back and forth that I just really enjoyed. The only thing, guys, that I'll point out here, and there's a reason I'm showing this, is you probably have noticed on the back of the book here, the very last line, you misspelled Zaritsky. You spelled it Mason. And it should have been said, keeper of the Bond brands, David Zaritsky and many others. Is there still time to fix that horrible misspelling?
Again, when people are drawing in your face on top of those images, they can etch and scratch out David Mason. I mean,
I
understand.
Yeah. I was going to say something that you brought up, and I can't remember.
I'll give you a minute. I'll give you a minute, Matt. But just, I think your viewers should know. You have saddled us with a debt that we cannot repay, basically, because you took all those pictures during Thanksgiving. I remember, like, you had Thanksgiving on. I think you even had a flood going on in your basement or something, right? And we were saying, David, we need these in the next 3 days. And anyway, you came through for us, and it was just great.
Yeah.
So.
I was happy to do it.
But David, so you were mentioning about how you think it's best to read, just don't jump around. But I think we did have in mind, this book can be used as a reference. So because it is in chronological order, and most Bond fans would be, familiar with the order of the films, it is something that you can go back to the book and you can go easily find that section, that era that you're looking for. Yeah. We did want to write it in a way that if you did, you might miss some things that are referenced earlier on in the book if you go jump ahead, because we didn't want to repeat ourselves. But I think that it is a kind of book that you can pick up and you can just go find what you're looking for. There's also a great index in the back of the book that can help people find what they want. So we wanted it to be able to be used as a reference book and not just read like a novel.
Yeah, and I think it's like art. It's like kind of what you take with you is the filter to which you're going to see this book, I would imagine.
I had this is going to sound a little bit artsy and whatever, but I had a Post-it note pretty much attached to my computer the whole time this book was being written, and it was a tagline. I wanted this to be the style novel to end all style novels, a bit like how Fleming had the spy novel to end all, or something like that. And I was conscious that this wasn't going to be the coffee table book. It's not going to be laden with beautiful pictures of Brosnan in Brioni suits. It's not going to be that, and it's not going to be the reference book that people just go, I need to know a certain fact, let me look it up in the index here. I mean, again, Matt said it can still be that, but I wanted it to have some flow. And I think both Matt and I were very keen on having this to be a story told by the people that were kind of there at the time making the clothes, and then making that flow as well. So that's what the objective was, and hopefully it's been achieved.
Well, as one of your first readers of the book, as from a fan standpoint, I will say that it served really two masters for me. Number one, and probably most importantly, it felt like a celebration. We celebrate this daily community, this hobby, this interest, this focus. But for many people, this is their livelihood. This is what puts bread on the table and lights in the sky. And so I feel like this was truly a celebration of all those individuals and what they brought together. But the second thing is, for me, it brought this huge amount of enjoyment in understanding more about the history of these things that typically we would just take for granted. We would just wear them, we would pick them out, but there's so much more to the story, it seems.
Yeah, well, and I know with you, David, you often mention in your videos about the clothes, about the people and the stories behind them, and that is why we wear them. I mean, we wear them because of the stories that Ian Fleming wrote and the screenwriters wrote. I mean, that is probably those are the main reasons why we like to dress like James Bond. But there are other stories, and I think they're just as interesting.
Yeah.
But you also had mentioned about the celebration, and that was something that Pete and I had always thought about throughout this book. We wanted to make sure that this was a celebration of James Bond style, because that is why we're reading it. We all have our favorite James Bond styles. We all have the styles that we hate, but we wanted this book to be at least for the people who loved everything. I mean, all the different styles, and I think everyone be able to pick up this book and find the styles that they love, and maybe they might start to love some of the styles that they didn't love as much before.
Yeah.
But also at the same time, we didn't want to just be over laudatory and just go, oh, look at Roger Moore in this. He looks the absolute nails, boys. So it's kind of, we subtracted pretty much all of our opinions in a way and made this a book less about us. I think, Matt, we both tried to take ourselves out of the equation here. And that was at times quite tough, because I would then send a passage back to you and say, have we just been heaping too much praise on this bit here? Or can we say that because we're really loving this suit? Can we, if we do it to this one, then we have to do it to everything else. So
right.
Those were certain things that we came across was, it wasn't really our opinions. It was never a book about our opinions on these clothes.
When you talk about style and when you talk about fashion and clothing and tailoring, a lot of what you put in this book, I love around the pomp and circumstance of certain things. And I have to say, I think you made a conscious decision. I want to note to the audience, because I'm going to take advantage of it. You have something that hasn't been done in a while, and that is you have a paperback softcover and you have a hardcover. And I feel like for those aficionados that celebrate this, the hardcover, there's something very traditional about the collectability of a hardcover. And by the way, it's literally the difference between a $27 purchase and a $37 purchase. So for me, it's like I'm gravitating to the hardcover, but was that a conscious decision on your parts?
No, I wouldn't say so. I think actually our publisher was just said, we do a soft cover and we do a hardcover.
Oh, I was making it more than it is.
Yeah, I'll publisher take that compliment. I'll forward it on to him.
Yeah, but, sometimes that's just how it works out. But I only so far, this is but we're doing this, just shortly before the book has been formally released, and I don't even have a hardcover. I have the soft cover. The soft cover is beautiful. I'm looking forward to seeing the hardcover version as well, which I'm sure will be even more beautiful. But I think we're happy for people to get the book in whatever form they want.
I spoke to John from Iconic Alternatives yesterday, and he said, I think I'll get the hardcover because it will be easier to kind of prop open doors and wobbly tables. those soft cover things, they're too flimsy for them sort of.
Whatever you're going to use them for, it's all fine.
Creepy coolies.
Now that this has come to fruition, now that it's available, now that people are starting to purchase this, who are you hoping reads this? I mean, and you could talk about celebrity and non-celebrity, but who do you want, if you hear this person reads this and drank it up, I mean, how is that going to excite you?
I'm really happy for anyone at all to read this. Mm-hmm. I think this book can serve so many people, whether it's people at the top of the fashion industry or the kids who want to just start out with their style. I mean, that's kind of what we all are hoping for. With everything that we've been doing all along. What do you think, B?
Well, we're going to send copies to Michael and Barbara, aren't we? Well, I might. Yeah. I'll take a trip down to Eon. It's not that far away from me, and hand them in at the front desk.
Ding dong.
There he is.
Ding dong. Matches up perfectly to the photo we have on the wall.
Yeah, identified. So anyway, was it the book that Martin Mulder had about the 50th anniversary of Pitt's Gloria? I think they did a full picture cover of that reunion that everybody went to, and I know that they sent, forgive me, I think it's Martin and another gentleman, they sent a copy of those books to Barbara and Michael, and then they got a letter back saying, hey, love the book, well done guys, keep up the good work. Yeah. And I just thought that was such a great thing from the fans' perspectives and also from the other side of the fence, that kind of little back and forth. I really admired that, so we'll see. We'll see what happens.
I loved it as well. Well, I know that everybody watching this right now is going to love the book. There are links below. Take advantage of it. And then hopefully, now here's my little wish. Here it is, Matt. Here's my little wish. I hope that a lot of us are going to be able to take those books and get autographs when we see these gentlemen somehow in person sometime in the future at some event. See, look, I'm not putting on dates, so this way we don't date ourselves. But that would be amazing to get a personal autograph from these amazing authors. And guys, I'm going to be also amongst the first in the Bond community to thank you. And I'm not blowing smoke here. Thank you for writing this. I feel like this book is not only needed, it's wanted. And in a time when a lot of us kind of had our chin down and a bit despondent, this is something that can, just for a few hours, just make us escape in something that we love. And you guys did it. And no one else did. And that's amazing. So thank you.
Thanks, David.
Thank you, sir. Well, and a quick note on the autographs. If people are compelled to ask for them, only do it when Anastasia's around, so that I look good. You know, if it's just me on my own signing autographs, not interested. But if Anastasia's behind me,
or Anastasia's mom.
Oh yeah, both. Both.
Just saying, Natasha. До свидания, Natasha. Правда.
Большое спасибо. I don't.
I picked her up some of her favorite vodka.
Really?
No, I didn't know what that vodka was. And welcome to our tangents. Anyway, gentlemen, thank you so much. I know you've got a stream of other reporters waiting in the other room. I want to let them get their fair share of you. Ladies, gentlemen, this has been Matt Spaiser and Peter Brooker, all together, the amazing authors of From Tailors With Love. Thanks, gentlemen. And me, I'm still David Zaritsky, the Bond Experience. We'll see you all real soon. Take care. Thanks for watching this episode. If you want to be up on the latest from the Bond Experience, just click on this subscribe and subscribe to our channel. You're going to get all the latest and greatest information, plus some exclusive content. And by the way, speaking of content, here's something especially for you, just because we know you. Talk to you soon.